Hey, what's up guys, it is Gunslinger here with another gameplay video of Helldivers, and this one will be going over the Pistols DLC pack. Now that is a DLC pack that released for Helldivers just last week or last month, depending on when you watch this video, and which consisted of 3 sidearms or pistols. These included the PLAS-3 Singe, which is a plasma-based weapon, the P6 Gunslinger, which is a nice little handy revolver, and then the FLAM-24 Pyro, which is insanely a flamethrower pistol. But let's go ahead and get to that. Actually, before we get started, I want to go over one essential, detail that you should know before even thinking about this DLC pack, and that's the case that Helldivers does not come, in fact, with a pistols or sidearms slot. In which case, in order to equip these pistols, whether they be the Singe, the Pyro, or the Gunslinger, you actually have to swap it out with a perk. Now, it's the same in-mission or pre-mission perk that you choose for your loadouts, such as the Stratagem Priority, the Displacement Field, the Heavy Armor, Laser Sight. Any of those right there, you have to, of course, substitute it with these weapons. In which case, you do want to know this ahead of time before you even think about buying this pack. Now, the first weapon I'm going to go over, the first sidearm I'm going to go over, is the FLAM-24 Pyro, because it is one of the simplest guns to go over, or at least one of the simplest new guns to go over. The FLAM-24 is a flame-based weapon that actually uses a clip system much like the FLAM-40 flamethrower. This one, of course, is going to have shorter range, seeing that it is a sidearm. As for the clip size, it is about 6 seconds of continuous flames, which do a decent amount of damage versus whether actually any enemy that you're playing against, or even a Helldiver, I guess. Where it is strongest suited for flame over distance, even though it's a short distance, and damaging multiple enemies at the same time. So expect the same kind of trade-offs you can expect from just the flamethrower, but with limited range. Do know that this weapon, like I said, is damage over time, so that can contribute to poor time to kill. Therefore, it is the best weapon to be using in a down state, but it is somewhat better than the other two in this pack. This is also not recommended against the stalkers of the bugs race, because they tend to get away before you can actually do a decent amount of damage or get the initial flame started on them, in which case they'll survive most encounters and actually run away and retreat, only to come back just a couple seconds later. So keep this in mind before buying this pack. Now, when it does come to using this against the alien races or the enemy factions in the game, do know that the Luminants are one of the worst ones to use this against. Not saying that this weapon is just absolutely terrible against them, it's just that flame-based weapons aren't the best to be using against the Luminants. You wind up using a lot of the ammunition or the fuel to it in order just to disable their shields, and the damage that it does to their actual core health is not too much. In which cases, you really don't want to use this, but I'm just saying, it varies by person, of course, but I wouldn't suggest using this against the Luminants. Now, when it comes to the Cyborgs, that's a different story. The Cyborgs are probably one of the best ones to use this against, other than the Bugs, who also are one of the best ones to use this against. Generally, these two have about the same kind of strength towards it. I really did find that burning some Bugs or burning the Scouts with this thing was very satisfying. Even though it does have its limited range, that will be very difficult to do before they trigger their alarms. But do know that versus the Cyborgs and the Bugs, they probably find its greatest strengths. Versus the Luminants, I would not suggest doing such things. Next up is the PLAS-3 Singe. The Singe is the plasma weapon I was just talking about earlier, in which case it fires plasma. Now, the plasma that it does fire does detonate on impact, so when you do shoot these shots and you do connect to an enemy or in a wall or a Helldiver, they do explode, dealing a small amount of damage in a small area. You can't expect this to be like the suppressor, but it is a kind of a good backup to that. But keep in mind that that small damage does actually contribute to you too if you are close enough. Therefore, when you go into a down state and you automatically switch to your pistol, if an enemy does close in within range, you can wind up killing yourself, as I did multiple, and I do mean multiple times, which means that this weapon is not in favor for like close quarters type of fights, which is generally when you need a pistol, usually when you hit the end of your mag and you need that backup weapon to finish a guy off. The fact that it does damage you in the process is not too good. Another thing that I did find that I did not like about this was this ammo. The ammo is actually an 8-shot to a magazine, in which is a finite number for each magazine. Now, with an energy-based weapon such as plasma, or particularly with this weapon here, I was hoping for more of a cooldown, such as with the laser weapons, or a charge up with the arc weapons. For an energy weapon to be restricted to such a strict number of shots per clip, I did not, and I still have not come to terms with that initially. But like I was saying, you know, each to their own. Maybe someone else will like this and doesn't mind at all. Like I said, it is one of the coolest looking weapons, especially when it does make contact with a enemy, particularly the Bugs, of course. it does make a nice little cool effect with the explosion, and it does do a decent amount of damage towards those enemies. So I do recommend it for use towards them, but do know that close quarters is not going to be too effective at all, in which case I actually going to take back that recommendation. That lack of close quarters really does draw this gun back, especially with the ammo already being so much of a problem. Now, I did try to use shields to counteract this, such as the new SH-32 or the SH-40, which was the bubble shield that we had from the base game, in which cases I found that they do not neglect the damage. It does kill off those shields rather quickly. It will save you maybe a shot before you die, in which case it kind of sucks not having this in general. But like I said, to each their own. Maybe someone else will find a great use for this weapon. It is good at range, but just in close quarters, not so much. And last but not least, the P6 Gunslinger. The Gunslinger is the revolver that I have not gone over yet, of course, because it's the last one. The revolver actually has a 6-shot magazine, much like other revolvers in every other game, or the actual real-life, revolvers. In which case, it does do a heavy amount of damage, but I was kind of hoping for more with this weapon. With only 6 shots to a magazine, I really expected something like, maybe even a 1-shot kill. That may have been asking for too much, but honestly, when it comes to so many enemies on screen, you do kind of want that extra bit of damage. Like I said, it still is a high damage weapon, dropping most enemies in 1 to 2 shots. I still, though, wish it at least had higher damage, if not unstoppable rounds. Even though unstoppable rounds on a pistol sounds a bit extreme, once you play with this weapon a little bit, you'll realize why I wanted that. Now, like I said, it does do a decent amount of damage, but do know versus the bugs, this is not going to count for much. Like I said, it does kill them in 1 to 2 shots, even the more higher ranking ones, not including, of course, the heavily armored behemoth and tank. But do know that the bugs generally come in massive numbers. They like to flood you with just quantity rather than brute strength or with firearms, such as with the Luminous and the Cyborgs. In which case, you can run out of ammo in this mag very quickly, especially when you're doing 2 shots to each enemy. So do know that versus the bugs, it's not the best weapon, just generally because of its clip size. But do know that a pistol will be a backup weapon rather than a primary, so maybe you can offset that by something. Now versus the Illuminus, you will find that it's a lot better because it downs the shields in usually 1 shot, and then if you hit dead center, you can usually kill an enemy. This is especially true for the unshielded enemies, in which you'll kill them in usually 1 shot. I even found with my subpar aim that I was down in the Illuminate scouts in no time at all, and was able to actually run half a mission without any alarms at all, without even trying actually. Now versus the Cyborgs, you can find greater improvements, in which case it does 1-shot most of the lower enemies, with 2 shots towards the more higher ones. I even nailed down a Cyborg mech with just a couple of shots. So do know that this weapon is best used against the Illuminus and the Cyborg, what its high damage does when shot dead center, which is the weak spot of course all enemies. It makes it a very strong and very useful weapon. Another thing to note is that if you haven't seen it in the video itself, is that the pistol does in fact come with a laser sight, which makes it a lot easier to aim these shots. The laser sight is much needed, especially with only 6 shots to a magazine. You don't want to miss a single one of them. So do keep that in mind as well when going to use the Gunslinger. Now the moment you've all been waiting for, of course, the final verdict on whether or not to actually buy this pack. In which case, I'm going to go ahead and say that I don't recommend buying the pistols pack at all. I mean, for those who, like I said, are fanatics for Helldivers, or that wants everything to the game, every last perk, every last weapon, every last piece of armor, then go ahead and go for it. It isn't the worst thing you can do. But like I said, the drawback of not having that secondary slot or that sidearm slot does really count against using this pack, in which case you don't want to pay $3 for the pack and then have to swap out your perks that you need so much for these higher level missions in order to use a pistol, just a pistol. And at the same time, these pistols have very strong drawbacks to each one, whether they be limited magazines, or even with the case of the Singe, the fact that it can actually kill you rather than save you if you're in a down state, or even sometimes when you're not in a down state. The drawbacks from these weapons does not make me want to recommend this to anyone at all, really. But like I said, if you really want everything to the game, go ahead and go for it. Just know all of these drawbacks, all these things that you signed on for when you do buy the pack. Now, there is no Reinforcement Pack 3, so therefore you have to buy each one of these DLC packs, whether they be the pistols, the Entrenched Pack, and the Vehicle Pack. Just keep in mind that you will have to pay for each one of these individually, in which case it is $3 for the Entrenched Pack, $3 for the Pistols Pack, and then $4 for the Vehicles Pack. Now, since it does not come in a bundle, it makes it even more difficult for me to even recommend this actually at all. So therefore, like I said, keep these things in mind, that the Gunslinger has that 6 shots, but they're not the highest damage, but it isn't exactly that bad at all. The Singe can likely and probably will kill you more times than it kills enemies. And then the FLAM-40, of course, does have its drawbacks with it being damage over time rather than direct damage, so do keep that in mind. Like I said, I'd rather maybe a shotgun pistol or something of that nature rather than a flamethrower pistol. It is a cool idea, but I can't say that it's the best. Now, even though I said that I don't recommend this pack at all, I say you guys drop some comments down in the comment section below, questions if you can, and ask your fellow Helldivers, because they have also used this weapon, in which case I'm only one opinion, and it doesn't make it law. So therefore, listen to your other fellow Helldivers. If you have friends that have purchased this pack, go ahead and get their feedback on it as well. Maybe my bad experiences aren't everyone else's experience, so therefore, go ahead and fill out there, see if you can find a different opinion. Maybe I'm completely wrong, or maybe I've mistaken this for a Call of Duty game of some sort. In which case, go ahead and drop some comments and questions down in the comment section below. Remember, you can subscribe to my channel or check it out anytime by clicking one of the links right there, of course. You could also find me on Twitter, Facebook, and Google+. All links are in the description.